Welcome to the Session X podcast. In this episode, I sit down with 17-year-old wingfoiling world champion Christopher MacDonald. We explored how Chris was first introduced to wingfoiling and immediately fell in love with this brand new sport, his first steps on the world tour, and ultimately setting his sights to becoming world champion, and the path he took to get there. While he doesn't share any trade secrets, he does give us insight into his motivation, mindset, and how he innovates some of the most mind-blowing and wild tricks that you'll ever see. It was an absolute pleasure to chat with Chris. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. I've been obsessed with action sports my entire life. A single universal language of pure stoke. In these timeless moments, we experience the greatest joys and purest emotions. Life makes sense, completely present, in harmony with nature. In studying the evolution of extreme sports, it's easy to identify a direct link to ultimate human performance, monk-like focus, body and mind mastery, mind-blowing applications of courage, confidence, and creativity. But where does it come from? How do we get it? And most importantly, how can more people access these superhuman qualities? My name is Matt Schollard. I'm a peak performance and mindset coach, and I'm also an extreme athlete. Together with some of the greatest action sport professionals on earth, we'll drop into the powerful lessons found within their chosen disciplines and explore how you can apply them toward your own journey of greatness. Welcome to Session X Podcast, the intersection of extreme sports and peak performance. Bro, welcome to the Session X Podcast, the newly minted wingfoil world champion, Christopher MacDonald.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Dude, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Stoked to be here.
We have watched your last entire competition year, and it has been nothing short of extraordinary. Yeah. And I want to talk all about that.
Okay.
But the one thing that we're going to come back to repeatedly is that I believe it was last season here in Hood River, where we were all just chatting with you like we normally do. And we're like, what's the goals? And you're like, well, I'm gonna be the world champion. Like zero fuss, straight face the whole time. Well, I'm gonna be the world champion.
Yeah.
So we're gonna come back to that because you are the wingfoil world champion. How's that feel?
Pretty good.
Has it like sunk in?
Yeah, I think it has.
When did it sink in?
Just after this last event in Brazil.
In Brazil?
I won it in Tarifa, but then just finishing the season, getting the trophy, that's when it really sunk in.
How'd it feel?
Good.
Yeah?
Rewarding.
In what way? What does rewarding feel like to you? Because you've been on a winning streak for a long time, dude. What did that feel like?
Well, last year it didn't really go my way. Like the heats and just the scoring, it wasn't on my side. But then this year, I think everything just clicked for me. I just got my competition mindset good, and winning is just like it's a good feeling. Like you win, but then next year there's gonna be a new champion, so you have to fight for that right after.
Do you feel more heat and pressure now? Because even though the season has just ended, you're already looking to next season. Do you feel the pressure like you did last year?
The pressure's definitely gone a bit. I mean, there's obviously still a lot.
Yeah.
Like this last event, I mean, I already won the championship, but there's still pressure during your heat, after your heat. But I mean,
that last final in Brazil, that was
fun.
That was heavy, man. That was good to watch.
Yeah. I mean, the shore break was so crazy. Like getting out was harder than doing the actual heat.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, 5-foot shore break on your head with wing gear.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun? So, I mean, to get out there and improve my wave skills was a huge accomplishment for me.
Awesome. All right, well, let's go back a little bit, man.
Okay.
Because winging is a new sport. Like, I remember, I don't think, I first saw you, 3 seasons ago?
Yeah.
You were like this little grom. There was nobody on the water winging, but you were out there and you would cruise around, and I think I would kite foil, and like I'd ride over you, we'd ride over to each other, and I would just, every time we were on the water, you'd have like a new trick. Do a backflip, and you'd go and send a backflip. That was 3 seasons ago.
Yeah. So I started kiting.
Okay.
Kite foiling.
That was your first wind and water sport, was kiting. When was
kiting.
That? How old were you?
12 in Hood River, learning on like a 4-meter Evo and like 40 knots.
Savage.
And then my dad started winging, and I was like, that looks lame. Like I never want to do that. And then one day I was like, okay, let me try it. And then like after my first ride, I was like, this is so fun.
Yeah, that was the source.
That was like at Chrissy Field, like shitty wind, and just like I just got up and it was just like a super free feeling.
Yeah.
And now from pretty much there on, I've been just winging.
Did you experience that with kiting, like that sense of freedom and
Kiting's different. I mean, I think it's more high maintenance.
Okay.
It's a bit more work.
Yeah.
And just winging is just chill, and you can do what you want. You can stop when you want and just think and just have fun.
Yeah. So then you knew your first session out at Chrissy Field with your dad that you were going to be a winger.
That was really fun.
Yeah. At the time, there was, I mean, the GWA didn't even exist. It was.
I think the GWA just had their first event in Brazil or around that time.
Did you have your sights set that like I want to like pursue this? Could you tell early on that that sport was going to blow up to what it has?
Not really at that time. Like I started learning freestyle tricks. I got like the 360, and then I realized, okay, I'm getting closer to them, but you know, there's still a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
And then during COVID, there was the GWA event in France, and like it was just like weird traveling because COVID, and we couldn't really get there. So we're like, okay, we'll wait. And then a bit time later, we went to Brazil, and that was my first GWA event there.
How'd you do in that event?
I got 5th, which was, so that's the quarterfinals. That's right before the semifinals. And I had a really good heat against Julien Boyer, which is a French rider. And I just beat him out. And then, yeah, pretty much that's when I realized, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. What did that do, like, for your motivation, for your drive? How did that influence it when you made the conscious decision of like, yeah, I'm actually going to be on the world tour?
Well, my first heat there wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Like I was just like super bobbled and nervous. And then for me, I think I'm a pretty competitive guy. Like I like to win.
Yeah.
So then I kind of just locked in for my next heat and had a pretty good heat and then went through. And then I lost the next heat because there was like no wind. I wasn't used to that. I'm used to Hood River 40 knots. But then, yeah, came back here and trained, and then next season was on.
When you say you're a competitive guy, what other areas of competition like had you experienced or participated in prior to winging?
Well, I mean, pretty much anything, like playing video games with my dad or his friends. Like if I'm not winning, I want to play again. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna stop playing till I win.
Are there any athletes that you look up to in that competitive mindset?
Definitely my dad.
Yeah.
Tituan Galea, he won.
He was a very early influence on you.
He was. He was an F1 rider, and then he kind of showed me how to freestyle and compete. Him also, and then some supercross guys on the motorcycles. We grew up going to Washougal.
Yeah.
Just not far from here.
Yeah.
There and watching those races, so that was pretty influential.
I had no exposure to like conventional sports growing up, like basketball or baseball or anything. But recently on Netflix, I watched the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I've watched like the first episode.
I cannot recommend that enough for you and like all the local Groms. It's just like his mindset surrounding competition. It's so profound, man. It's just like for him, competition was everything.
Yeah.
Almost to the point of like bordering like psychopathy, but he was able to, to harness it. Like there's images of him or clips of him like after just winning a championship game, he's like going down and competing with like a game of quarters with like one of the security guards and doing that. All right. So you come home, your first year on the world tour. What does training look like for you then? Like,
training is never really training for me. It's me going out winging and doing the sport I love and learning new tricks, seeing on Instagram and trying to replicate that on the water.
Who were you pulling inspiration from at the time?
I mean, pretty much everyone. Like my good buddy Malo, who's the 22 world champion.
Yep.
He was innovating a lot of tricks. Balls Mueller, the Swiss man, he was innovating. But I mean, also I'm doing my own tricks.
Yeah.
And just learning the process.
Yeah, it's interesting to look back on that. It really was not that long ago that you were pulling inspiration from other people.
Yeah.
You look over the last 2 seasons, I think you have been one of the most innovative riders. You have more worlds firsts, especially in competition.
Yeah.
It's like I couldn't scroll Instagram on any given day with like, oh, look at it. Here's Chris adding another rotation, another flip, another variation on it. Like as far as innovation goes, you're incredible. Like truly, like
Yeah.
remarkable. And what's so fascinating to me is you are pulling a sport that is essentially in its infancy,
Yeah.
and you're like one of the founding fathers of it.
Yeah.
Where does that creativity come from in you?
I mean, wingfoiling is so new. Like, there's so many tricks we haven't thought about or tried yet. I mean, we're always trying new tricks. Like, we have a ton of new freestyle tricks now, like more kiting where you do like handle passes and stuff.
Yeah.
But also, like, for me, spinning is a big fun thing for me. Like, I've done the world's first 1440, which is 4 spins.
1440.
And I mean, I do the 1080 and I'm like, I could do another one. And now I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, I could do a 5th one. So now
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the right conditions, and I think I'm going to send it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow. What
think
are the
I'm
right
ready.
conditions for that?
Probably a good hatch day,
Okay.
or maybe a good day in Mexico where I'm going tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I mean, it has to be like super windy. I have to be on my 2.5, my small wing.
You obviously you know who Tony Hawk is.
Yep.
You follow skateboarding at all?
A little bit.
The progression in vert ramp skateboarding, especially when adding rotations, like there were literal years
Yeah.
between adding even a half rotation.
Yeah.
You're talking about adding a complete additional 5th rotation on top of your 4.5. You're adding it in a span of months.
Yeah.
How does it feel for you to know that you are like people 10, 15, 20 years from now are going to look back when you're my age and you're sitting in this seat and you're like, well, yeah, I was, literally the godfather of wing foiling. Like, how does it, do you feel like a certain amount of pride in being like one of the OGs of freestyle winging?
I definitely do feel some pride, just like a bit. But I also think it's everyone. It's not just me. It's people who are pushing me to do the next trick.
Yeah.
And I think it's everyone as a whole in the sport pushing it.
Yeah. Who else is out there innovating as much as you are right now?
I'd say Malo,
Malo?
the French rider.
Yeah.
He's crazy.
You guys had that final together in Gran Canaria.
We've had a few finals. We had the first stop of the 23 season was in New Zealand.
Okay.
And wingfoiling there was kind of at a halt in innovation. We were just doing like the same 3 tricks, the backflip, front flip, and 720.
Yeah.
And then the GWA was like, okay, let's kind of stop these kids just from doing the same tricks.
Right.
So in France, we did the new thing called the innovation score. So if you did a new trick that has never been seen before or never done before, you get a 1.3 score advantage. And I mean, that just really blew everything up. And from since then, I mean, there's new tricks every event.
That's amazing. Where do you think these athletes, and yourself included, are pulling this inspiration from? Is it windsurfing? Is it kiteboarding? Is it a little of both? Like, how do you have the creative foresight to be like, well, if I add this rotation or I do this like mimic handle pass, it's going to be, a new trick essentially. Like, where does that come from, do you think?
I think it's really like a gather of everything, like snowboarding and doing corks, kite surfing and doing handle passes, and doing like big tricks, big rotations, and skateboarding. I think just trying new stuff, like going out and just like flailing and smacking the water from 20 feet up. And then you're like, okay, if I turn right instead of left, you can do it. But I think it's just a lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error, for sure. Do you enjoy that process?
I do. Like,
Yeah?
I think it's really rewarding. Like, I'll do the same trick, land it, and slightly fall over like 1,000 times. And then the one I land at, I'll be like, okay, I'll go in. And then I'll be like, okay, I got to land one more to make two to make it true.
True. Two, that's the phrase, huh?
2 to make it true.
I like that. We used to say one is none, 2 is one is none.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just go back a little bit to, you are on the world tour post COVID. You're like, really, you have this trajectory, and now you're like, well, I'm a professional athlete. Like, you went from being, you've been going to online school for all of high school.
I did like the first trimester of freshman and sophomore. And then,
Okay. But then you decide, I'm going to go everything full send into professional athletics. I want to be, on the wingfoil world tour. I'm going to go to prioritize my life around building my life around professional athletics.
Yeah.
What was there, like a very conscious and deliberate shift, or was it more kind of just organically, that's how it happened?
I think it was pretty organic. Like, as I said, I'm never training. Like, this isn't a job for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just having fun and doing the sport I love. And I think the shift, pretty organic. And then, I'm training more, but I mean, obviously I'm still having fun.
At the end of the day, you're just chilling and having fun. When that, like, when you did look back and realize, like, hey, I'm on the, I think your mom wrote it like in a Christmas card to everyone. She's like, oh, yeah, Christopher's off on the world tour. And it's
Yeah.
like, I remember reading it like, oh yeah, Christopher's on the world tour right now. Like you guys are never home. I never
Yeah.
see you or your dad. It's just like, you guys are gone on the world tour. Was there ever like a sense of like pressure? Like, I know you're having fun and you're enjoying the sport, but did you ever feel the pressure of like, well, actually, yes, I am on the world tour of as a professional athlete?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bit.
Okay.
I think my riding has helped me a lot. Like I've been riding good, and no matter what I do, I'm happy with what I've done, with the new tricks I've created, and
Yeah.
that. I think one of the harder parts, like the pressure, is traveling for us. I mean, it's like quadruple of anyone else living in America.
Yeah.
Like if someone has 2 flights, we have like 5. We have to grab our bags like 5 times
Yeah.
for the whole total. But I mean, yeah.
Which is a thing. Some people, you know, might not actually like recognize the additional challenge of that, but like the logistics of just simply getting to a location, like Cape Verde or you know, Brazil even. It's like that's a minimum of 3 flights, and you're lugging 5, 60 plus pound board bags through the airport. You're jet lagged, and you're expected to show up and perform at this super high level. Have you found any like best practices with travel? Like you've been doing it so much lately. Like how do you get into that rhythm that when you leave Hood River and you show up at a new destination 48, 72 hours later, you're like, all right, if the event starts today, I'm ready. Like what's your competition process?
Well, for me, Hood River is a good spot to train because you have the river going one way and the wind going other. So when you land, you really have to balance because the river's pushing you. But then when you travel to a new spot like Brazil, like it's lighter wind. This is really windy here. So I mean, I think you need like a minimum of 3 days to get warmed up and get used to conditions before you can compete.
Okay.
Like
so you factor that in, you get there early. Okay.
Like I'm at least 3 days early. Like the wind is different. It feels different. It pushes you different. But I mean, once you're used to it, you're good.
Yeah. What else? How do you tackle like jet lag and nutrition? I know, you know, we actually, both of our families just recently returned from Brazil, and we were collectively speaking about the difficulty in finding very nutrient-dense nutrition as a challenge. Like, how do you, as you go to all these different spots on the world tour and the GWA, it's like, because it's still growing, they're adding a new location to some remote end of the earth, almost like, you know, quarterly. How do you like maintain the conditions, or at least you control them to your best ability so that you do set yourself up for fertile grounds for success?
Well, when I get there, I try to be relaxed as I can. We have like a nice hotel where we can just chill and do homework and go get some food somewhere. And then you don't want to think about it too much, but you also have to develop your heat while you're there. Adapt like one of the hardest things is adapting your heat to the conditions. Because, like, let's say I have a big trick, like a 1080. Like, I can do that in windy conditions, lighter conditions, but if it gets too light, I can't do it. So you kind of have to feel something for it. But, I mean, eating-wise, try to be healthy. I'm not the best at that, but, I mean, I'm getting better.
Is it becoming more important to you as you are getting older? You're almost 18, Christopher. Like, you're going to have to start thinking about these things.
I think I have a pretty fast metabolism, so I'm still pretty lucky, but I am realizing and getting better at that.
Talk to me more about building your heat. I like that. I like that idea. Like, describe to me, like, one, what that means. Like, I know, I think I have an understanding, but explain to me what that means and what's your process surrounding it.
So building heat is, pretty complicated. Like, if you have a new trick that you can land like 80% of the time, you feel comfortable doing it, that's never a guarantee in competition. Like, for me, I like to have my tricks on lock before I go into competition. Like, I know there's like a 90% chance I'm going to land it. And then also adapting to the conditions. If it's windy, you're going to have like the craziest heat. Like we just saw King of the Air. They're doing double loops. And then day one, they weren't doing double loops because it's not that windy. But I mean, yeah, you have to adapt it. Light wind, your tricks aren't going to be as technical. But I mean, you still have to do it big and do it high. And then high wind, you're just going full send.
Yeah. So when you get on the water and you make it out through the shore break, you already have in your mind the strategy with which your heat is going to go. Do you have your tricks in order of how you want to do them? Or are you looking to maybe reply to your competitor's trick, or like, what's your process on that?
For me, I just have my heat set before I even go out.
Okay.
So let's say I do. So I think there was 8 attempts, maybe, and like 2 tricks counting. So if
wow.
I
Best
maybe
two?
6, maybe 6 attempts.
Oh wow.
But so for Brazil, if there's waves and wind, it'll be a mixed format, surf freestyle. So you have 2 waves counting and 2 tricks. So you have to balance that in one heat, because if there's a set right at the start of the heat, you gotta
Respond to the set.
decide
Yeah.
if you're gonna do a trick or you're gonna go for a wave. But I have my heat set before I go out, and then if I don't land a big trick, I'll have a trick to replace it. So
Okay.
right after, I can just do it for a score.
Yeah.
And then maybe after, like if you're kind of on a test and you don't know how to do a problem, you come back to it later. So you just do that.
That's a really cool analogy.
Yep.
I'm really big into the neuroscience of optimal psychology,
Yep.
and especially this concept of flow state. I know you and I have spoken about it offline multiple times, but what you're describing, it's really cool. One of the big flow triggers that helps people to get into flow state, we have triggers or optimal conditions. The more that are present, the more likely we are to drop into flow. What you're describing is you're establishing clear goals for yourself, right? You're turning your attention inward. You're making this motivation. It's called intrinsic motivation. You're not motivated by the fact that, oh, I need to beat my competitor. It's like, well, no, I have very clear goals. I want to go out and do this trick, and this trick. You have immediate feedback. You're either landing the tricks or you're not. You have risk, right? The risk is like, well, I know I'm in competition. I know that there's, hundreds of thousands of people who are going to view this event. I know I have like a sincere desire to be here. I'm following passion. I'm following, my purpose. But that idea of like establishing the goals for yourself, I think is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, especially your age, you're 17 years old. When you're that age, you're sort of like developing who you are as a young person. We're influenced by society. We're influenced by our peers. And you have this really beautiful resource in winging that allows you to like really craft your trajectory, like following your own compass. And that's really special, man. I hope as you know, I have a son who's also 17 and a professional athlete. And it's like, as much as I want to describe to him like the wonderful life that he has, you might not realize it until later in life, but you'll look back and be like, man, that was really, really
Lucky.
cool. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk more about when you're crafting your heat. What I want to know is when you go out, what is your mindset when it does not go according to plan? And I bring this up because I believe maybe it was you against, maybe it was Mano in Gran Canaria last summer, where I think you were trying the same trick over and over again. I could be wrong, but I think you tried at least 3 times. You did stick it, but I was like watching your face when the camera would pan to you, and it was like I could see this like frustrated motivation.
Yeah.
What does it feel like internally when you have this clear goal and like you're not meeting it because you thrive in competition? So tell me about that internal dialogue that you're experiencing.
Well, I think when I crash a few times, I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm trying to diagnose the problem. Like, I mean, is my gear not right? Is the wind not right? What's happening? But I'm also trying to stay focused. Like a heat can be short if you make it short, but if you just stay calm and stretch it out, you can make it long. And if you crash a trick a few times, maybe I'll give up. But if I think I can land it, the next time, I can do it. I think that was in Fuerte.
Yeah, Fuerte. That's
in the final.
Yep.
And yeah, I crashed the first 2 times, and I was like, okay, if I crash the first 2 times, there's a high chance I'm going to make it the third one. So I just kept with it, and then I ended up landing it. And then kind of the pressure's on because you don't have many attempts left, and you have to get at least 2 more scores. So then you really have to focus and stop your next 2 tricks.
So what you're describing regarding time loosely sounds like something called time dilation, which is a very common occurrence when people experience flow state, where our perception of time is altered. Either it speeds up or it slows down because we're so hyper focused. When you say that you can, if you want to go fast, it goes faster. If you want to go slow, like how do you, and you may not even know this, but I'm curious, like how do you influence the perception of time in competition? Because that's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, if you're super nervous and like you're not really just in the right state and you're like crashing a few times and then like you hit a piece of seaweed and just fall in the water, like you're gonna be tired because you got to get back up. You're gonna be nervous. But if you just realize, okay, you have 7 more attempts, you only have to land 3 tricks. You still have all that time. You can still land it.
It's like the gamification process.
And in
brain.
Fuerte, it was interesting. We were going by turns. So there's a person on the beach doing flags. And flags are interesting because you get to see exactly what your competitor's doing, which can apply pressure or take it off.
Yeah.
Like if you see your competitor who's right before you do a huge trick, you know you have to land yours as well. So for me, honestly, I try not even to look. Unless I'm like behind, I won't even look. Like, okay, whatever, because then there's less pressure.
Yeah.
But flags are interesting because it's really everyone's watching you and you're right in the moment.
Yeah. There's a saying in swimming, like swim your own race.
Yeah.
There's a really famous picture. I forgot what Olympics it was, but it's Michael Phelps. You know who he is?
Yeah.
He was alive in the 1900s. Yeah. Anyway, he's swimming and there's a guy who's glancing over at him and he's just a few milliseconds behind. And it's like that one little deviation.
Yep.
Like it's why he lost the race.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that you don't like to watch your competitor, is that just because you're swimming your own race at that time?
Yeah, pretty
You're
much.
so focused and in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
How did you develop your competition mindset?
I think it's like a lifetime thing.
Okay.
I think it's like that predator instinct of like you want to win.
Yeah.
And video games, like honestly, like that's a big one. I mean, it's fun, but I also want to win. Like I play Patrick a lot
Yeah.
in sports games, and if he's winning, I'm gonna go full try hard and full focus.
Yeah.
And hopefully win.
That's a really cool like way to replicate sort of the conditions. Because whether you're in physical competition or whether you're in like, hand-eye coordination, like the circumstances are the same. You still have clear goals, you still have immediate feedback, you still have risk, you still have reward, all of those things. I think that's like really fascinating that people can use things like video games, and especially in the way that we can play them now. Back when I was a kid, I was playing Duck Hunt against the screen. Like I really wasn't gonna, as much as I wanted to convince myself it made me a better athlete, probably wasn't the case. But I think in your generation and what you guys are doing, it's super helpful.
It's like not even really the video game. It's just going against your buddy and whoever, it's like it's a chipping game. Like I can do this better and you can do this better, and then you kind of just keep going.
But that's how it seems like all of your events are.
Yeah.
It's you against your mates.
Exactly.
Like the GWA, though it is growing rapidly, and the influence that wingfoilers have, it's ultimately like you against the homies.
Yeah, exactly.
We watched that this morning with the King of the Air final. Jeremy, Andrea, and Lorenzo, 3 guys who grew up kiteboarding together.
Exactly.
Now they're on this massive global stage competing at the highest level.
I mean, I'm good friends with all my competitors, like Malo and every Azavi on the tour. Like, yeah, you're rivals, but I mean, you're still out there having fun. Like before our heat, we'll go out for a fun session, try new tricks, and I think riding by yourself, you innovate a lot less as if you were with other riders.
Yeah, so there's I'm gonna bring it back to flow state. There's the concept of individual flow, and then there's the concept of group flow. Group flow is significantly more potent in regards to innovation than individual flow. If you look at an NFL team in the Super Bowl, the Chicago Bulls, SEAL Team 6, any of these really high-performing group organizations who operate at these unspoken levels of communication, and they're all funneling their focus towards a shared goal. It's really fascinating because it's like rooted in human evolution, where we want to collectively grow the survivability of our species. I just had a conversation earlier today with a friend, Jason Slezak, who was one of the godfathers of kiteboarding, just like you are with wingfoiling. And he was sharing the same experience where amongst his friends in the early days at Real Water Sports, like that was the progression of kiteboarding. And now you and your mates get to grow this wonderful sport that is now the most, I think it's like, it's single-handedly the most popular water sport and growing water sport. How does that, like that responsibility, like, do you feel, like, do you, like, what's that feel like to you, knowing that you and your mates are growing what will ultimately probably become one of the most popular water sports in the world?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of responsibility, but I mean, I don't really realize it that much. Like I just have fun and just riding with my friends and inventing new tricks, trying dumb stuff where you land on your head and you're like, oh, but then you're fine after. But I mean, I feel a bit of responsibility, but still not that much because there's so many riders and everyone plays their part.
Truly. All right. So now that let's go deep. So last year, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, you said to me and many others, I'm gonna be the world champion next year. But you didn't just say it, you knew it. You knew it. Did you know, like you knew it then, yeah?
I like 80% knew it.
80% knew it. How did you shore it up? What was that process for you?
Well, I think a lot of it is how much wind you have before a competition. And at that time, Mexico was windy every day.
Okay.
Hood River was wind every day. So you have a lot of training. Like I had my big tricks on lock. I knew what I was going to do. And for me, you got to learn. A trick is just a trick, but you got to learn how to do it.
Right.
Like there's a process where you're trying a new trick, but you have to also like, it's hard to describe. You got to learn how to do it. Like you got to learn how to crash and you got to learn how to get back and change something in your mind.
Yeah.
Like when you do a trick, you don't just do it. You have to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like you go left and then you try to go downwind and then you bend your knees when you're landing.
I think
something like that.
Yeah, what you're describing is you're getting feedback at every attempt.
Exactly.
And it's learning to process and catalog that feedback so that you can then learn and apply those lessons toward future attempts. You and so many of the local Hood River athletes, which as we can both agree, Hood River is sort of like the epicenter of incredible. We have so many world-class athletes. You guys spend a lot of time doing like alternative training with like gymnastics and trampoline and air awareness. Has that, clearly it has, but tell me the influence that cross training and those disciplines have had on your riding.
Well, I think a big part for me in my wingfoiling career, which has helped me a lot. I mean, ever since I was young, I've loved the trampoline. I mean, like after school, I'd go out and go on my trampoline for 2 hours with my friends and learn a ton of new tricks, like double backflips, doing Cody's, which is like a stomach backflip, and then going on YouTube and watching these pro guys on tramps and then going to do that. Like, I mean, I was on the trampoline probably thousands of hours.
Yeah.
I think that's helped me a lot.
I mean, I see it, right? I see what you guys are doing on the trampoline. I see you reinforcing your body movements and your air awareness.
Yeah.
Are there any other like disciplines that you practice or are like prioritizing for your physical body to help you in this upcoming season?
I think balance and flexibility is a big one.
Yeah.
I think the GWA is all about consistency. If you're getting podiums every time or at least getting close to it, you're going to have a good result. You're going to be fighting for a championship. But I mean, balance is a big one. Like on a wingboard or a foil, when you land, you have to know which way to lean. I mean, you're pretty much blind with wind and water blowing in your face and your wing right there.
Yeah.
So you're basically landing with your eyes closed. But also flexibility, because I mean, injury is obviously a big part. Like for injuries, you got to learn how to crash. Like if you're really high up in the air and something goes wrong, like your strap comes out or you're just like falling awkwardly, you got to learn how to save it.
Yeah.
Like that's a big one. You got to learn how to crash.
Learning how to crash is so crucial that was what separated. So I grew up in the early generation of like skateboarding. And then for me, it was the guys who could fall, who could learn how to crash, that had more longevity with it. In bigger kiteboarding, we see the exact same thing. It's the guys and gals who know how to fall, know how to enter the water, know how to slow down a crash.
Yeah.
That brings up a point. Injuries don't seem to be as extreme at that really high level of wing foiling. Are you seeing something similar or am I missing something?
No, I see similar. Like there isn't that many big injuries. I think the most dangerous part is the sharp foil.
Yeah.
That's under you.
Yeah, which I think you've had a couple rounds of stitches from.
My first backflip attempt, I got like 3 stitches right here. But then pretty much from then, I think I've like slapped my foil once.
You're also bit by a shark.
I was also, by like a little barracuda. I was just in Mexico.
Oh, it was a barracuda?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
I liked it when the rumor was there was a shark.
Yeah, okay. Baby great white shark. So I was just riding in Mexico, like at the upper lot, Rasta. And I was just riding. I did like a 360 or something and then crashed. And I was kind of just chilling there, like just sitting there, like, oh, I just crashed. And it felt like I was like kicking my foil underwater. Like something sharp was really hitting me in my leg. I was like, oh, what is that? And I was like 99% of the time it happened, I was just confused. I was like, what's going on? And like it felt like I was kicking my foil and I was getting cut, and I look up and my board's like 10 feet away. And I'm like, am I like on a rock or something? And then it kind of stopped, and then it kind of like bit me again. So then I kind of like scrambled to my board and was like really close to my board trying to grab it. And then it like fully came back and latched on like right here. And it's like
Damn.
20 stitches or so.
Wow.
And then it would like kind of went to the back. So I went like this and kind of like pushed it off and got it off. And then I was like, oh. So I got on my board. I got on my wing. And then the guy who I was riding with, well, first of all, my mom left me. We're all on a downwinder, and she was nowhere to be seen. She was just gone. I was like, okay, I'm out here alone. Luckily, my dad was still on the beach because he was driving down to pick us up. So I was waiting for it to leave. Obviously, I don't think it was going to come back, but I was waiting for it. So then I just got on my board, rode back in, came up to the beach. I was like, yeah, I just got bit by something. I'm like pouring blood, you know. One of the bites actually got really close to my Achilles. Like it's like it's right above it. And then after that, we were like, okay, maybe there's a lot of doctors in La Ventana just because people are there. Yep. So we went down and they're like, can you guys stitch it up? And this one guy was like, I mean, we could, but there could be a tooth in it. So then we're like, okay, we can't do that. So then we went to La Paz, just one of the hospitals, and got it stitched up. The stitches definitely hurt more than the bite. That's for sure.
Wow. How long were you out of the water for with that?
2 weeks. And it was like the first day I got my new board, and it was like
epic
the
forecast every day.
was just nuking. So I was bumming, but
oh man,
whatever. Makes you grateful.
When you went back into the water, were you a little more like keeping your legs on the board? Or were you chill?
I was kind of like, let's get it. I'm ready this time.
Okay,
like I'll punch you.
Fight back.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm coming for you. All right. I want to talk about something that I watched happen. I'm pretty sure it was Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was your first wave event. The short pound was gnarly, and you took one on the head, man. What was that? Brazil?
I've taken plenty on the head.
There was one though that was like
probably Brazil.
I think it was Brazil. I think you took a fat chunk of water on the head, and I think like maybe didn't do so well in that heat.
No. Well, I mean, if you get hit by a wave at any other time, if you've ever been hit with a wing in a wave, you know how hard it pulls you. I mean, it's like the strongest force I've ever felt, and it just pulls you. And then, I mean, some of the time it's gonna snap your leash, and then, I mean, you're done.
Yeah. But since then, you have really kind of come into your own as a wave rider.
Yeah.
What was that the catalyst, like taking that wave or all those waves on the head where you're like, I recognize this as a weakness, I'm going to shore it up?
I think a big thing about waves is learning how to ride where it's shallow water, the wave is breaking, and it's, you know, all the bubbles, and you're in like a foot of water. You got to learn how to get out of that and just learn how to ride in sketchy conditions where there's like
people may not realize that. So if people don't actually foil, like what he's describing, it's like he's riding on a meter long samurai sword. And if there's 12 inches of water, you now have to be aware enough to stay above that. Yeah.
So that's a big thing, but also getting out and learning how to take a wave, because there are going to be like clean out sets that you have to just sit through. And I think the best thing is to just sit on your board and hold your wing up, and it usually just pushes you by. And then getting out is obviously hard, but I mean, it's a skill you can learn. It's just like any trick. You just have to keep practicing and you can get it.
Where are some of your preferred wave riding conditions?
Mexico was fun.
Like Generals?
Yeah, Generals.
That's a nice spot.
The Palapa, where it's just like a beach break. That's fun. Brazil is super fun. I wish it was a bit windier there, but can't get everything.
Yeah.
Those waves are really fun, a bit like messier, but I mean, that's kind of what you want in a foil. You can just do like big flips and just mess around. But Cabo Verde is just big waves. Those are also fun.
Yeah.
I mean, every wave is fun.
Do you see more surf influence starting to penetrate the competitive wing world tour?
I think a lot of riders, well, now there's two disciplines in the freestyle kind of range. There's surf freestyle, which is the one I'm competing on, where it's freestyle and waves. And then there's just the pure wave tour, where you have your wing, but you can't use your wing. So you just ride with it and do airs and 360s and whatnot.
That's like the judging criteria? It's like judged essentially like you're surfing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Do you see yourself gravitating towards that discipline at all?
Maybe when I'm older, but just for now, I mean, it would be like an extra 3 events to travel to. So
Mm.
just sticking to surf freestyle right now.
Okay. So all these lessons, man, these are really incredible, powerful life lessons. You're world traveled, you're a professional athlete, you're the world champion, you have overcome adversity, obstacle, challenge, you have grown as a human, as an athlete. Um, how has this process influenced other areas of your life? Are you doing better in school because of it?
School is hard because I mean, if I'm always traveling, I have to do online school.
Mm,
But also, it's kind of motivated me to keep my foot in the door. Like water sports and winging isn't the biggest money maker
yeah,
out of like if you're in like basketball and you can be like a $50 million contract.
right.
But also like I'm gonna go to college in a few years and pursue that, but also keep my foot in the door.
What do you plan to study at university?
I'm undeclared right now, but
Undeclared. Nice.
I don't know yet. I'm still thinking.
Yeah. But so let's look at another, maybe not school as an example. What other areas of your life has your experience as an athlete positively influenced?
Well, it's just made me really grateful. Like
Nice.
I'm super lucky. Like as my parents always say, I won the parent lottery.
As they would
Like
say.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I said the same thing too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just so lucky in competition. If you're not winning, you still have to realize, I mean, you're wing foiling on a cool beach in the middle of nowhere. Like, you just have to be grateful. You just have to be like, your sponsors are super nice to you. You've met all these cool people. Like, you just have to be grateful.
That's huge, man. That's really
Yeah.
like emotionally mature and a very powerful message that I think is not right or wrong, but it is definitely lost on a younger generation.
Yeah.
When I was 17, I wasn't grateful for
Mhm.
much, man. So I think that's wonderful, and it's even more powerful that you can share that gratitude on a larger scale. So then it brings the question, you kind of touched on it earlier, of like if you couldn't wing foil, like where else would you apply this drive or this passion and energy towards?
Obviously other water sports. Like I think surfing be cool to pursue, and
Mm,
kiting. I'm gonna go kite in Mexico right when I get
yeah,
down there.
that's great.
I'm excited to switch it up and do something new
Yeah.
and just becoming a more rounded waterman, I think.
Mhm.
Just trying everything I can, and
Who were some of your big influences for Waterman?
Kai Lenny, he's a big one. You in your CrossFit and motivation.
Thank you.
And I mean pretty much just everyone. Like I think you can take a little bit from everything and pursue it yourself.
Yeah, it's really wonderful that the idea of polyathletes and
Hmm.
multidisciplined athletes is a thing.
Yeah.
Jason Slezak and I were chatting previously about like this idea of like surf culture,
Hmm.
especially in the late 1900s, being this like very exclusive mafia that was like really
Yeah.
challenging to gain entrance to. Whereas now, because of people like Kai, like Robbie
Hmm.
Nash, like Pete Cabrina, some of these, really diverse athletes who ultimately were just looking to have more fun in
Hmm.
more conditions. It has fostered this environment where people can be polyathletes,
Hmm.
where you as the wing foil world champion can now go and commit 2 seasons
Yeah.
to paddle surfing and compete at a super high level in that discipline as
Hmm.
well. Do you besides kiteboarding in Mexico this season, like do you have your sights set on like really committing and learning any other craft?
Kind of. I think just for now, I'm sticking with wing foiling as my main activity.
Yeah.
But also, I want to slowly spread my roots into other sports.
Mm. Did you see that?
I don't
Did
know.
you see Jaws on a foil the other week,
Yeah, I
last
don't.
fall?
I'm not ready for that. I saw it, but that's
Wasn't that
crazy.
insane? Like just the amount of input and
Yeah,
speed. Like
like
that's an
I
accomplishment.
wonder how big the foil is. It must be like this big.
Right? Like a butter
Yeah,
knife.
exactly. It's crazy. Like the guy crashing, it's gnarly.
He crashed on like the wave after that one, and it was pretty gnarly. One of my
Like,
buddies was doing water safety out of Piahi that day, and he's like, he just like, how small can
yeah,
you
and
possibly
you just
make
like your
yourself?
foil's right next to you too.
Oh man. So you kind of touched on it earlier with balance and flexibility. I want to go back to that. Are you starting to add any type of like programming? Are you like stretching more? Like what's
I'm
that look
definitely
like?
working out and stretching more,
Okay.
like trying to get on the Peloton and just running and just cardio. And because the big thing is light wind,
Mm,
and you have to pump for at least like 30 seconds to get up in light wind.
yeah.
So working on that, working on flexibility. When you have like an awkward crash, you can just get up and kind of walk it off.
Yeah.
And then balance, like balance boards and just stuff like that.
Nice. Like what's your like give me an example of like what your flexibility program, I might not even be programming, like how you incorporate it in your day-to-day life.
Well, just do like a basic yoga style workout, and just like before my session, like you should stretch right when you're about to go out. Like
Yeah.
it's better to do it before than be injured on the water.
Yeah.
And just do that, and then also warm up. Like if you're winging, you don't want to go do your biggest trick right away. You kind of got to work up to it. Like I'm not gonna do a 1440 my first trick unless I'm feeling like a savage or something. I don't know.
So
I think I've
good.
done it once.
Straight out the gate into
Yeah.
1440.
Someone was filming, so I was like, okay, I'll just do it.
I was, as you know, I work with a lot of like the King of the Air athletes,
Mhm.
and something that we really spent this last summer season working on was a lot of like
Mhm.
joint strength. I mean, that's your most vulnerable spot, especially
Yeah.
in that space, but also in winging too, at the level you're doing. Like your joints are the most vulnerable. Your neck,
Mhm.
your knees, especially when you have foot straps on. You know the amount of torsion on your ankle, your knee, your hips. So yeah, I'm really definitely keen to hear as you get older as an athlete, like how you start to incorporate some of this joint strengthening, and
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to, right? When you surround the joint with muscle, it just adds like an extra layer
Yeah.
of defense on it. And something that we were working with the big air kiteboarders was neck training, actually, because these
Mhm.
guys are hitting the water, and you hit the water fast enough, your chance of traumatic brain injury,
Yeah.
of concussion, it's so high. But they've done a lot of really remarkable studies with NFL players regarding neck strength,
Mhm.
that it reduces your risk of concussion and traumatic brain injury by
Yeah.
exponential factors. So that's something that it's kind of my own little personal rant there. I'd like to see the tricks become even more extreme, that the level of care toward the athletes is there as well. And that's something that I'm sure I've spoken to you. I definitely have spoken to your dad
Yeah.
about, is it's like when you have athletes 17, 18, 20, whatever, who are out pushing the
Mhm.
limits with these sports, the limits push back,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's you taking a giant wave on the head, whether it's
Yeah.
a funky landing, like you're out there, you're pushing the limits, one, because you love to, but also because there's this external pressure from your sponsors, from the
Yeah.
competition. And I think that we as a global action adventure wind and water sport community, we like owe it to our young riders and to our old
Yeah.
riders to like insulate you guys with like teaching you how to train, how to recover, how
Mhm.
to find balance, how to know. I think Jesse Richmond said it best. It's to have the balls to pull the loop, but the wisdom to know when not to.
Exactly.
And I think that that's something that is really trainable, and in a way that we can practice that. So yeah, man. Exciting times. All right. So let's go back to this last world tour. So you know that you're about to be the world champion. What was the first stop on that tour?
It was in New Zealand, Taronga,
Okay.
which is a far travel.
That was a mission to
That's
get there.
long.
Yeah.
But we arrived there. It was like no wind, but there's really good surf oil. So for the first few days, I mean, there was no wind up until the competition. So
Mm. So
we
you're
were-
pre 3 days getting
Yeah.
out, building your heat.
your
didn't
first
exist.
heat is like the first time you're riding is your first heat.
Oh man.
So you have to be ready.
Okay.
And I mean, the wind was not that good. And then like later in the week, we had like storm rain conditions we were racing in. But we ended up doing it in the harbor, which is more like flat water. And yeah, I ended up winning that just by like skin of my teeth. But yeah,
Okay. So at that point, you're like, all right, check that box. Like,
yeah, I'm ready.
I'm 1/5. There's 5 stops.
Yeah, there's 7 stops.
7. Okay. So you're 1/7 of the way toward your goal.
But also an interesting thing is there's 2 discards. So if there's 4 events, there's 1 discard. And once it reaches 7th, there's 2 discards. And what a discard is, your worst 2 results will be subtracted from your score. So it's your 5 best.
Okay.
So winning the first one is a big key because you have a lock.
Yeah.
That's the position you have lock.
Yeah.
And then we went to France, and because of the innovation score, I didn't have that much time to get new tricks. So a lot of riders had new innovation before me. So I ended up getting 5th there. So then I'm like, okay, maybe I can take this as my discard, maybe not. And then, so it went New Zealand, France, and then I think we went to the Canary Islands, Gran Canaria, Fuerteventura. And then we went to Denmark, which was like super light wind and waves. So that was like really the first surf freestyle event, which is mixed. So you have waves and freestyle. And then we went to Tarifa and then Brazil.
Okay. What were your 2 discards?
It was France and Denmark.
Okay. So the 2nd and 7th, or
2nd and 5th.
And 5th.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a really interesting pressure. And
Yeah.
it just, only because it just happened this morning watching the King of the Air final. Look at how Lorenzo rides.
Yeah.
It's like the buzzer goes and like
They're
there's
all
not
going.
and Lorenzo already has a trick on the board.
Yeah.
And like that's his approach, right? He just gets out. He wants to get a high scoring trick on the board. I get that. I understand that pressure, right? Where like you show up and you're like, well, my first event, like you won it. You won New Zealand. It's like, okay, cool. A little bit of pressure's off. You still know that you have those discards. So you can sort of strategize over the next few months.
And a big thing is building your heat. Like that's a big thing we have to teach these younger riders. And if in their heat, don't do your biggest trick first. You want to do these little tricks that you know you're going to land and just get scores on the board because you never know what's going to happen. The wind could die halfway through and both of you guys don't even get to do your last half tricks. So then whoever had like a jump or a 360 over a couple crashes wins the heat. So building your heat is a big thing. But also at the end of the heat, you have to land your big tricks. You might be tired, but you still have to land them.
Yeah. Talk to me about this innovation score. I like that. I think that's a really cool concept that's perpetuating the growth of wingfoiling. It's like rewarding obviously innovation.
So at the end of like 2022 season, start of 23, as I said, we were kind of in a stuck position, doing like the same big tricks, like the top riders doing the same 3 tricks. And then so we switched up in Lacat, and a big thing that we changed was you could do combos. So that means when you land, if you have to pop up right away after and you can do another trick. So I mean that switched up everything.
Were you the one who brought that to the table? Where'd that come from?
The GWA brought it, and then the first event I couldn't really do it, so I adjusted some gear and then everything just clicked. And then the next event after that, it was just going crazy. Like new combos every day. Like a big one's the backflip to backflip. Like, I mean, which is still hard. Like I can do it like 10% of the time where you land it. And then if you're not on the kicker perfectly, you're not going to land it. You're going to land on your head. So, but also that was a big one. Like, I think it was a year of a lot of changes. Like rules were changing every time. The brackets were changing because some of the events, it was 2 people heats and 1 advance. But some of them were 4 people heats and 2 advanced. So that's a bit weird because people can have like a really good heat, and so you have to also perform. And if there's 4 people, that's more of a chance of people like having a breakout heat.
Yeah. You've had quite a few world's firsts in competition. I can't speak to all of them, but what are you 1440?
I haven't tried one yet.
No? What was the world's first just recently you had in competition?
I don't even know. I forget. I had the backflip to 360 to 360 combo. And then in Tarifa, I had the backflip land into a 720 combo.
Yeah. And you stacked that as your last trick.
I think so, yeah.
Wow. So you came out, got your score on the board, and then just sent full savage. That's so good.
Full savage.
When you finish a heat, when you finish like so say you're, you advance, you're in the semifinals. With each progressive heat in a competition, when you finish it, What's your mindset? Does it just narrow your focus even more and like just really like laser pinpoint your eye on the prize?
So I think for me, the hardest heat is the quarterfinals,
Mm,
because if you go through the quarterfinals, you're in the semifinals, and no matter what, you go to the next heat,
yeah.
even if you get second. So for me, if I get past the quarterfinals, like that's when I just lock in. That's I think when I ride my best. Like
Yeah.
for me, I rarely crash, and just those are my best heats when I
Yeah.
know I can go to the next one, where you kind of have that like safety cushion.
Yeah. Something that started in surfing, whereas there were some phenomenal surfers.
Mhm.
And back in the early days of like competitive surfing, there was a world, I mean, Stroll is obviously,
Yeah.
but there was like the world tour. And if you want to be a professional surfer, that was your livelihood. You got on the world tour, you participated in
Mhm.
these competitions, you traveled, you did all the same, same things that you're doing now. And then people started to break away from competition. They were
Yeah.
like, look, I love surfing. I'm a phenomenal rider. I can interpret a wave and express myself on this wave
Mhm.
better, with the best of them. But in competition, this doesn't really vibe with me.
Yeah.
So you start to see this idea of free surfing. And thankfully through media, that's when surf films started to become popular, where
Yeah.
guys and women would travel the world and they would artistically express themselves on a wave. Do you see potential with something like free winging ever
Yeah.
existing?
Well, that's interesting because like some riders have it and some riders don't.
Tell me
Like
about that.
that's like a hard margin line where you have it or you don't have it.
Yeah.
But you can learn it obviously in competition. But for me, like some people can be crazy free riders. They're just like they never crash and they're just super good when they're just riding by themselves or you're with them. And then you have to be good when you're in a condensed situation, everyone's watching you and there's a timer. Like it's a lot different between when you're in the buzzers if you're not.
Yeah.
Like some people are crazy free riding and then they get in competition and they kind of lose it and then they don't land as much.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept. And like we're starting to see more opportunities for like free riding,
Yeah.
with like foiling magazines
Hmm.
sort of is pushing a lot of cool missions where people are going out. But I think because winging is such a new sport, we're kind of just penetrating where we can go with it. And we have a lot of different models. We can follow windsurfing, kiting, surfing,
Yeah.
snowboarding, skating, or we can kind of just do our own thing with it. And are there any riders that you see that have just been exceptional riders, like through what they're putting out on social
Yeah.
media, but maybe when they get to competition, they're not quite like something's not quite clicking?
Well, it's hard to say. Like you can tell a lot by just watching someone, like compared to on Instagram. Because on
Mm,
Instagram, everyone's at their best.
truly,
Like if I go filming, I'm gonna crash, but you never post your crashes pretty much. So on Instagram, everyone's the best.
right?
Like they never crash. It's like a perfect little reel. But it's interesting watching them in person. I don't. It's hard to put a
All right.
name on
Well,
a
that brings
person.
up another question. So when I grew up and I was first entering the world of extreme athletics and doing these things, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have
Yeah.
social media, the internet barely existed. So I didn't have this like every time I'm scrolling through social media, I'm seeing like
Yeah.
another world's first.
Mhm.
I think it's like a kind of a mixed bag. I
Yeah.
think in some ways it's incredibly positive because you get this external motivation.
Hmm.
And in other ways, maybe for some people it can be like a little bit discouraging.
Yeah.
Like you have obviously you're the champ, man. Like you're killing it. And like I said, I look at Instagram and it's like, oh, there's Christopher with another incredible world's first. And I just wonder, like maybe the younger athlete who's aspiring to get on the GWA, like if they're using that as inspiration or if they're being like, man, like this is a really intense level to get to. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Instagram's a pretty interesting tool because you can use it as like to assert like dominance.
Mm,
Like I mean, you can post something and everyone will see it and then everyone think you can do it in real life, but
yeah.
sometimes you can't. Like maybe that was just like a lucky trick you did or
But
something
now it's
like
a
that.
mind game.
Exactly. That's
Ah.
what it is, I'd say. I'd say it's a mind game.
Have you used it to your advantage and or disadvantage?
Um Kinda.
Yeah.
I'd
You
say
don't have to spell trade
not
secrets.
really. Not
Yeah.
really.
Everyone's trying to
I
get
just post to, have fun and get
Yeah.
more followers and
Yeah. And
show
I
my
mean,
friends.
everything you put out is just it's stoke,
Yeah.
it's positivity, it really, you represent yourself, the Chris MacDonald brand. It's something to be proud of. I know your parents were super proud. We're super proud of you in our community, and it's incredible to see. All right, so now you're this wise 17-year-old wing foil world champion. What advice do you give the younger riders who are up and coming?
I mean, get back up. Like, I've crashed thousands of times and I'm like, should I go in? I kind of want to give up and just don't. I mean, like, it can be hard at times, like learning a new trick or seeing people on Instagram, like you say, and being discouraged. But I think you're closer than you think. Like, if you can learn a few new tricks or innovate a few new tricks, you can also be at the spot where I am.
Do you enjoy, because I know every tourist stop you go to, you interact with new, younger, or sometimes older, you interact with new riders on the tour. Do you enjoy like the mentorship aspect of it?
Yeah, I think senior riders is a big key to the younger riders. Like having someone to look up for, like me was Tituan. Seeing his style, like you try to adapt it to yourself, and then you just slowly evolve like with them. And then at one point you're gonna go over them.
The student becomes the
exactly.
master. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, just have fun. I think that's the most important part. Don't turn it into a job. Like some people will say they're training. I'm not training. I'm just having fun.
Yeah, I love that, man. All right, let's flip the demographic. You're out at the hatchery on a Nukin Classic Gorge day, and you see all these older riders, because winging, one of the really cool things about winging is it became so much more accessible for an entirely new demographic. I was speaking, like I mentioned earlier, with Sleazy, where my whole core thesis in Session X and in my coaching professional life is that when people have an action adventure sport to build their life around, it influences everything. It encourages them to work out more, to eat better, to sleep better, to have more meaningful relationships, to prioritize seeking out flow state. It enriches people's lives. And what I love about winging is it's so accessible for people. Some people are very intimidated by kiteboarding, and understandably, right? You see King of the Air stuff, and the people are very intimidated by the lines. But wing foiling has opened the floodgates for people who can go out and neurochemically experience the same joy and satisfaction as Kai, as Jesse Richmond, as these people who are charging world-class jaws. It becomes scalable. So now the floodgates are open, which, one, it's beautiful because it is enriching more people's lives. And it's also bringing more people to the sports that we love. So you're out at the hatchery, and everybody, you ride at the same spot. You're at the point. You always have photographers and videographers on you, and people are in the water. Granted, there's less people struggling at the hatchery, but they still come up. They still come up there sometimes and try and learn. What do you say to those people?
I mean, just keep doing it. Like, there's no judging or anything at the hatchery or any spot, I'd say. Wingfoiling is a super nice community. I think it's really welcoming. And I mean, without all the riders here and in the world, there's no GWA.
Truly.
There isn't anything. So I think thank you to everyone and you guys.
That's super, man. That's a really, really wise and well thought out. That's heavy, man. That's great. Super proud of you, dude. All right. Last statement. You have the whole world is listening. I mean, maybe not. Hopefully this one blows up. But you have the entire action and adventure sport community. I'll lead this with like my personal ethos is like, I believe that we can unite people and we can grow our greater action and adventure sport community and like really bring people together through more authentic human connections, through sharing our own journeys, through sharing our training, our failures, our wins, all of it, right? And that's like the voice that is unique to me. What would you say to the greater action adventure sports community has been your most powerful lesson as a 17-year-old wing foil world champion?
For me, I think the most powerful lesson is just being grateful. Like, we have to realize what we're doing, and water sports can be annoying sometimes. If the wind's not right or my gear's not right, like, you got to realize like what you're complaining about. Like, yeah, platinum problems, as my dad would say. So
First world problems.
yeah, so just be grateful and realize that you're like literally in the best spot in the world, and if things are not going your way, just stay calm and you can get through it.
Hell yeah, man. Chris MacDonald, brother, thank you so much for joining today and for taking time out of your schedule. I know you guys are packing and
Yep.
heading out tomorrow. So we look forward to seeing what you accomplish in 2024. And thanks again for taking the time, my man.
Thank you.
Chew.